Alright, let's hope this bitch works because I am one more inconvenience away from a crash out. What is up, YouTube? My name is Trinity and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome to another Spooktober video that has taken me 3 tries so far to actually get recorded, which is really taking me back to my early days of YouTube where one little inconvenience and I'd crash out. Today we are going to be talking about the trial of Arne Cheyenne Johnson, also known as the Devil Made Me Do It trial. On November 24th of 1981, 19-year-old Arne Johnson was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, being charged with first-degree manslaughter for the killing of his 40-year-old landlord, Alan Bono. This was considered the first unlawful killing in the history of Brookfield, Connecticut. Him being convicted of manslaughter was, without a joke, a miracle. He very well could have faced the death penalty for his crimes at this time. The initial plea made by Arne's lawyer, Martin Minella, had been guilty by reason of demonic possession, which is probably the #1 reason that this case blew up in the US. With that being said, though, this plea was immediately thrown out by the judge as demonic possession wasn't something that could be proven. So his team had to scramble together and change their plea to not guilty by reason of self-defense. And while this did save him from heavier penalties, Arne, his wife Debbie, and her family are still adamant to this day that he was possessed by the devil. Now, in the summer of 1980, Debbie and Arne were preparing to move into their own home. They found a house near Brookfield, Connecticut, and Debbie brought over her family to start cleaning out the home because it was a bit of a fixer-upper. Her 11-year-old brother, David, said that he immediately felt that something was off about the house. He did not like it. It gave him the creeps. And as soon as he walked in, he just wanted to leave. However, he was helping the family clean, so he went up to the second-floor bedroom, and that is where he came into contact with a strange man. He said it looked like your average old man. He was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, however his eyes were completely black, and whatever this entity was attacked him, pushing him back onto a bed that had been left in the house. Now, David told his family about this after running out of the house, though they chalked it up to him just making things up so he didn't have to clean. However, that night, when they went back to the family home, David apparently saw this being again in his room, though the features of his face had changed. It said that David saw his skin was horribly burnt, and he kind of looked like a stereotypical devil mask that you might find at Spirit Halloween, so very exaggerated, with horns and fangs, and he had cloven feet and pointed ears. After this, David would begin waking up, convulsing and screaming, having night terrors, as well as beginning to speak in different languages or speaking in tongues. He would also begin reciting passages of the Bible and Milton's Paradise Lost, all in Latin. At the same time, bruises and scratches and cuts would begin appearing all over his body randomly. He would attack others in his family and verbally lash out at them in ways that were not characteristic of who he was as a child. There were also times where it would look like he was being strangled. He would begin having trouble breathing. It would sound like he's choking, despite no one being anywhere near him. After 12 nights of this, Judy Glatzel, their mother, would begin contacting priests from the church, as well as Ed and Lorraine Warren, who had just become much more well known to the general public because of their work at the Amityville Horror House. Over the course of the summer, the Warrens worked with 6 priests to try to help David, and they witnessed his deteriorating state. Lorraine herself claimed to see a dark mass that was always around David, and she claimed that up to 43 demonic entities were inside of him. Now, the prayers and blessings by them and the priests did very little to help. The Glatzels and the Warrens both believed that David needed an exorcism. However, the priests were a little more hesitant on that. Apparently, it takes a lot of evidence for the church to approve an exorcism. One of the forms of evidence is a psychological evaluation to prove that whatever is happening to this individual is not being caused by mental illness. However, the local church approved of 2 lesser rituals that are kind of like mini exorcisms called deliverances. The first one was performed in August, and this is where Lorraine said she even saw David begin to levitate off of the ground. And this is also where Arne Johnson, who, to his credit, was very very brave, if not dumb, said to whatever was possessing David, "Leave this little kid alone. Take me on. I'm here. Take me on." And Lorraine looked at him afterwards and said, "What did you just do?" The second deliverance happened the next month in September, and Arnie said the same thing. And I like to imagine Lorraine Warren turning to him and being like, "You know what? Fuck around and find out." Now, after the second ritual, David's behavior and mental and physical state all improved drastically. He seemed to be the same little boy that he was before all of this started happening. However, as you could probably guess, Arnie, on the other hand, started feeling a little weird. Debbie, who I found out was 26, dating this 19-year-old who had apparently been in love with her since he was 12, make of that what you will, she claimed that he would seemingly dissociate, and while in this state, he would see the beast, which is what they called the old man or demon that David initially saw. While driving one day, apparently some unseen force grabbed the wheel and almost drove him into a tree. And Arnie also worked as a tree trimmer, and again, some sort of force pushed him out of that tree. He also claimed to see something evil while looking down the well behind the house. And to that, I have to ask, why are we always looking down spooky-ass wells? I know at the time this happened, there weren't a million horror movies that tell us not to do that, but it just seems like common sense, especially when you may be possessed. Instead of moving into the house where this all started, they decided instead to rent an apartment from a man named Alan Bono. He was originally from Australia, but he had moved to Florida and then moved up to Connecticut in order to manage a dog kennel that his sister ran. Above the dog kennels, there were multiple different apartments, and he decided to rent one out to the two of them, as well as hire Debbie to be a dog groomer there. All seemed relatively okay. Like, Arnie was still acting pretty weird, but nothing over the top was happening. He wasn't having these fits like David was. I don't know if the Warrens or the Catholic Church were keeping tabs on him, which I feel like they should have been after he invited a demon into him at essentially an exorcism, but what do I know? Though it is said that the Warrens actually did contact the police after the second deliverance and let them know that something bad could happen. All would seemingly be okay until February 16th of 1981. Arnie went down to the dog kennels to visit Debbie, and Alan offered to take the two of them out to lunch. Afterwards, they went back to Alan's apartment where Arnie offered to fix something of his that was broken. And things just seemed to escalate from there. Debbie said that she felt a tension in the air, like something was about to happen. And some reports also say that Alan was drinking, and others say that all three of them were drinking. So it was kind of a recipe for disaster. Some sort of argument broke out between Arnie and Alan, which led to them fighting on the front lawn. And this is where Arnie pulled out a 5-inch switchblade and stabbed Alan over 20 times in the chest and stomach, all while apparently growling like a feral animal. And as soon as all of this was over, he apparently stood up very calmly and just walked into some nearby woods. Police found him walking along the road about 2 miles from the kennels, and he was arrested for assault because at this time, Alan Bono had not been pronounced dead at the hospital. Arnie, apparently during this pickup, looked very dazed and confused. According to Sergeant Gordon Fairchild, Arnie said something to the effect of, "I think that I hurt someone, but I can't remember it." So like I said before, it was kind of a miracle that the self-defense angle worked, considering how many times he stabbed Alan. As I stated earlier, he was sentenced to 10 to 20 years, but actually got out after only 5 years due to good behavior, though he did marry Debbie while still in prison. And to this day, the couple, along with Debbie's family, believe that he was genuinely possessed that day. Well, maybe I shouldn't say the entire family. Debbie and David's brother Carl, who was 15 at the time of David's alleged possessions, did not think that his brother was actually possessed. He believes that his family believes it, but he personally thought that there was probably something psychological going on with David. And this was a sentiment shared with Carl Sr., who was their father, because apparently when David was having his episodes or fits, whatever you want to call them, they would end as soon as their father told him to knock it off. They believe that whatever issues David was having, it wasn't thought to be possession until that idea was put into his head by Judy, their mother, and then exacerbated by Ed and Lorraine Warren being around and talking about all of this stuff. Ed and Lorraine would bring up symptoms of demonic possession, and lo and behold, David would start exhibiting these symptoms. Judy Glatzel was also very controlling of her family. She would drug them every night by putting a sleep aid called Sominax in their food. It's an antihistamine that can double as a sleep aid. However, using it too often can cause euphoria, psychosis, and hallucinations. In fact, people purposely abuse this medication for its hallucinogenic effects. That explains David, and Arne was also living with the Glatzel family at the time of these apparent possessions, so he was already primed to believe that demonic possession was happening, and he was also being drugged at the same time as them. The brother also mentioned that he heard the Warrens talking about getting rich off of the family's story. After the publishing of the book Devil in Connecticut, the Warrens received $81,000, while the family only received between $2,000 and $5,000, despite it being their story. And as far as a potential motive for why Arne would do this, police initially thought that this could have been a crime due to jealousy because Arne was apparently very possessive of Debbie, and there were rumors that Debbie was having an affair with Alan. Now, there's no evidence of this, at least that I know of. Debbie denies it, obviously. So it's possible that a million different things could have culminated for this tragic incident to happen. Arne was already primed to believe in demonic possession. He was being drugged, and him being possessive, it could have led to him maybe even blacking out. Maybe he truly doesn't remember what he did, and he chalked it up to being possessed when really it was just a culmination of all sorts of things, plus his rage at the thought of his fiance potentially cheating on him. And as has become a theme in this series, we see another instance of the Warrens potentially taking advantage of people that were seeking their help. Even though Judy gives me red flags, it sounds like she kind of also wanted to take advantage of whatever her son was experiencing and make money off of it. But the Warrens made a lot of money off of what was most likely just a very mentally ill child, which is reminiscent of the previous case we covered where Roger Perrin kicked out the Warrens because they were contributing to whatever issues his wife Carolyn was having. I think this is a really interesting case, just like the Amityville Horror, since it blends the supernatural and superstition along with a true crime that happened. Do I think Arne was actually possessed by the devil? No. However, I do think there's probably more to it than him just blacking out and killing the guy. I definitely think Judy, who was drugging everyone, definitely probably played a part in that. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think that there was some other element going on that pushed Arne in the direction of committing this crime? Do you think that something was genuinely wrong with David and Arne was just taking advantage of that? Or do you think that the whole demonic defense thing, do you think that that was purely the Warrens doing and they thought that they could prove it with whatever evidence they collected? If you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell to be notified anytime I upload. You will especially want that for the rest of the month as I attempt to get through the rest of the big Warren file cases that inspire different Conjuring movies. I believe we have 3 more. Thank you guys so much for all of your love and support. I really do appreciate you guys. I have not forgot about the 500 sub special, even though by the time I get around to it, we may as well be at 600. It's really hard to plan a time to get drunk, especially when you work full-time and you're a student. Also, don't forget that I have an email now open for you guys to submit your own scary stories. Just sharing our scary stories with each other because I think it would be a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.